So this is your review over sections 7.1 to 7.3. This is also covering all of the questions on your review worksheet. Okay, so let's make sure that we have the correct answers to the vocab section. This is definitely on your test tomorrow. That a relation pairs inputs with outputs. Basically what we're saying is it's a set of ordered pairs. It's a set of ordered pairs. Okay, so you need to know that. A function now pairs each input with one output. So if one input has two outputs, it's not a function. Every set of ordered pairs is a relation, but it's only a function if each input has one output. Okay? A function rule is an equation that describes the relationship between inputs and outputs. You do need to know which variable is the independent variable. Which variable? X or Y? X. Which variable is the dependent? Y. Okay? Basically, you can choose whatever value you want for X, but that's going to determine the value for Y. Okay? All right, linear function can be written as y equals mx plus b. What does m stand for? Slope. What does b stand for? Y-intercept. You need to know those. Okay, next slide. List the ordered pairs. So that's the first thing that we're going to do. From the table is list the ordered pairs. All right, I want you guys to say them with me. Okay, -3, 5. -2, 6, 1, 7, 0, 7. Is it a function? Yes, it is a function because each input has one output. Even though there's an output that's shared, it's still a function. Okay, and now, is there a relationship? Is there a relationship between input and output? Yes. There is not, because of this last set right here that shares. Okay, if that last set didn't share the output, there would have been a pattern, but because it shares, there's no pattern. There's no relationship, and that's okay for there to be no relationship. Okay, all right, let's look at the second set. Let's say the ordered pairs together. 1, 4. What's the next one? 2, 3, 3, 5, 3, 6, 4, 6, and 5, 7. Is it a function? No. No. And on your quiz yesterday, some of you lost points because you only said no, or because you said no, each input has to have one output, but you didn't say which one it was. So we just have to be specific. Yeah, it's just a couple points, but we want all the points we can get on our test because on the quiz question, actually one input had two outputs, and then two inputs had one output, so we just need to make sure that you know what you're looking at. Okay? So which input had two outputs? Just tell me. 3. Okay, so all you have to say is that 3 has two outputs. Okay? You're just saying like which input had the two. And then, is there a relationship? There would have been had it not been for the 3. Okay? As each input increases, the output increases by 1 also. However, 3 had two outputs, so it makes it no relationship. All right, next slide. Okay, function rules. You're going to have a couple statements. I believe there's 3 on your test tomorrow where you take the statement and you have to write a function rule. What does that mean? You're basically writing the equation that represents the statement. So let's look at the first one. The output is 9 more than 3 times the input. Anybody think that they got that right? Robbie?
Y equals 3x plus 9.
Very good. Now, can someone else, someone different, raise your hand and tell them, why did 9 come second? Because it actually came first in the statement, but why did I write it second, Armani? Very good. It was more than. So if it had just said the sum of 9 and 3 times the input, then it would have been 9 plus 3x. But because it was more than, it has to come second. And you can definitely expect to see that on your test tomorrow. All right, the output is the square of the input. Sam?
Oh, y equals x squared.
Y equals x squared. So, again, where you see squared, that definitely means that you're raising it to the second power. All right, now next section. This is a whole section on your test tomorrow. I believe I put 3 questions. It's for sure 2. It might even be 3 questions on your test, where you just substitute and solve. All you're doing is plugging in the value. Okay, so plug in 3 in for x, and what did you get? Just tell me. What did you get? 6. No, that's fine. 6 minus 2 is 4. Okay, 6 minus 2 is 4. All right, any questions on that section, those sections? I mean, that's a good, what did I say, 3 questions, we'll say 5 questions minimum. That's 20 points on your test tomorrow, just that. Okay, 20 to 24 points. I can't remember how many questions I made for this section. All right, 1/5 of your test is this slide. Okay, all right, next one, graphing functions. Right, had a lot of people struggling with this yesterday. There's actually 2 ways that you can graph this function. Some of you, which I think is awesome and actually pretty impressive, some of you remembered how to graph it without showing any work here. Actually, you can just read the function and know where the points go. Does anybody remember how to do that? Some of you actually did it on your quiz yesterday. Okay, because where does my first point go? Where does my first point go according to my equation? It goes on the 1, on the y-intercept. And where do I go from that point? Where do I go from that point? What tells me? Up 3 over 1. The slope. I can follow my slope to plot the second point. If you remember that method, we haven't gone over it in this chapter specifically, but you can do that. Absolutely. Now, the method that the book focused on, so we ended up focusing on and kind of following what the book does, is using a table of values. So if I'm using a table of values, what values do I use for my inputs? What values do I use?
-2,
Yes, -202. Okay, and then I get my outputs. What are my outputs? -5, 1, and 7. And then I can match them up, and now I can come over here and plot my points. And guess what, guys? Again, if you follow just the slope and y-intercept, your points end up lying on that line, okay? So either way, you'll get it correct, okay? All right, so if you got it wrong on your worksheets, does anybody have any questions? All right, and odds are, here's what my hope is, when I give you your quizzes back in a minute, if you got it wrong, you're like, oh, I know how to do this now. Okay, so we're kind of just making progress that way. Okay, so this was definitely a section I saw a lot more struggles, is writing linear functions. Writing linear functions. I think part of the problem is when you read the directions, you kind of blinked out, like writing a linear function. I saw all kinds of different work. All right, now, I did see a lot of people get it right, but not even close to where we need to be. Okay, so if you got it wrong, you're not alone. But let's look at the review sheet. Hopefully we can start working through that. I need you guys asking questions, okay? You're doing a really good job so far. All right, so in order to write a linear function, I need a slope and I need a y-intercept. Okay, so how can I get the slope from a set of values in a table? How could I figure out what the slope is? How could I figure it out? Chloe, do you think you know? Yes, pull out the ordered pairs. I need to pull out the ordered pairs. Hopefully you did that on your worksheet. Maybe even Friday you did that on your worksheet. Okay, guys, the ordered pairs you don't pull out horizontally. So I saw a lot of that yesterday, that people pulled out -4, -2, say, as an ordered pair. But that's not an x, y value together. What is the first ordered pair? -4, 8. What is the second ordered pair? -2, 4. Could I have picked other ordered pairs in the table? Absolutely. I could have picked the second and the third one, or the third and the fourth one, as long as they're back to back. Now I can plug it in. What's my formula for slope? y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, plug them in. All right, did you get -2 for your slope? Okay, so a lot of people stopped here on the quiz yesterday. But this is the hardest part of writing your function. But now you have to plug it back in to the y equals mx plus b. Negative 2 goes in for what in the equation?
The slope.
It goes in for m. So y equals, please don't forget to do this tomorrow because I can't give you any credit for just writing the slope. Y equals negative 2x, and what is my y-intercept? What's the last number in my equation? 0. Since it's a 0, do I technically have to write it? No. You could either write plus 0, or you could just write negative 2x. Either one would be fine, okay? Because it's 0. Plus 0 to me kind of reminds you, hey, there's a point there, okay? All right, so now let's look at the graph. Let's look at the graph. You know, you're going to have the y equals. How can you figure out your slope now? Actually, without doing any work, you can just read the graph. How can you figure out the slope? Someone raise your hand and tell me. How can you figure out the slope? You have a graph that you're looking at. You don't have to pull out the ordered pairs. You can just do what, Caleb? Rise over run. Between 2 points. So don't skip a point. But between, let's just do the first 2 points. Between the first point and the second point, what is my rise between the points? Haley, what did you get for the rise between those 2 points? 3. Very good. And what was the run, guys? Just tell me. 2. 3 over 2x. Just like that. And now I need a y-intercept. Okay, well, how can I see what value that is, Jakari? Plus 2. How did you know that? Where does it cross the y-axis? 2. That's it. And that's how I write the function. Okay? So you have one of these on your test tomorrow. So again, on 2 for the table, I think 1 for the graph. So how many is that? 12 points on your test tomorrow? Okay? Is this. So again, hopefully when I give your quizzes back in a minute, you guys can just correct these like you know how to do it now. Okay? You can study your worksheets tonight, and we can do really well on the test tomorrow. All right, modeling real life. All right, so we go back to like your one-way subway tickets. All right, and you have your input values are your zone numbers. Okay, you have zones 0 through 3, and how much it costs depending on how many zones you're passing through. All right, so is it a function? Is the mapping diagram showing me a list of values that's a function? Yes, because what's my criteria? Every input has one output. So yeah, it's a function. Okay. And now I need to, and here's where it comes into the interpretation part, and definitely the part I saw the most people yesterday struggling with. How could I describe the relationship between the price and the zone number? How could I describe that relationship? Did anybody think they got that answer, Faith?
Number 2.
Yes, we're on number 2.
That each value goes up by 2.
Okay, so you're on the right track, but we have to name the categories. Like what, you know, we said zone, price number, like, or price. How can I put that into a sentence? Kendall?
Every zone you pass through, you pay $2 per zone you go through.
Okay, $2, and I would like to see that word more, $2 more. Okay, but that's exactly right, okay, and I would take it. As the zones increase by 1, so for every zone you pass through, just like she said, the price increases by $2. So we're just putting that into a sentence, okay, instead of calling it input-output. So on the quiz yesterday, I did have a couple people say, as the input increases, the output increases, but those were categories in the problem, so you have to name them, okay. So zones and prices was this one. All right, so in the last section, you were supposed to graph the linear function. How did you figure out what numbers you wanted to use, let's say, for your x values? How did you figure that out? What kind of told you that you shouldn't do 10, 20, 30, 40? Okay, what were your x values up there in the table? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So did you just go by ones? 1, 2, 3, 4? Okay, what about on your Y values? So your revenue values went from 4 to 12. So how did you do your Y values? What intervals? Twos? Okay. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Okay, so my first ordered pair was 0, 4. Okay, so I just plot a point at 0 up 4. Okay, my next one was 1, 6. My next one was what? Tell me. 2, 8. And then what? 3, 10. And then what? Oh, hold on. I gotta skip them. All right, sorry. 2, 6. I'm like way zoomed in, so I just lost track of where my grids were. Okay, is that better? All right, now I just draw a line straight through and I've graphed it. Okay, and yeah, it's a linear function. Okay, now I need to write the equation for the linear function. Technically, since I've graphed it, I can read my graph, just count my rise over my run, or I can use my ordered pairs. So for this one, what did you find for your slope? Y equals what? What was your slope? Did anybody find the slope? Again, pull out ordered pairs to find slope or read the graph. Both of those we've already reviewed. 2 people got the slope. Did anybody else get the slope? Write the function, okay? So that part, we had a lot of people missing on the quiz. I need to figure out what the slope is. Caleb?
It's 2 over 1.
2 over 1, or just 2x. What is my y-intercept? The ordered pairs tell me what is my y-intercept. Ashley, what's my y-intercept for this one? What's my y-intercept? The table tells me. I just look back up to the table. Bailey, you know it? What's my y-intercept? Remember? Aaliyah?
4.
It's 4. It's paired with the ordered pair that has 0 for x. Okay, so my y-intercept is 4 plus 4. So now I need to interpret. I need to interpret my slope. What does that mean? Okay, well, as x is changing and increasing, there's going to be a pattern with what is happening to my y values. Okay, so for each interval, how is x increasing? It's increasing by how many? What does that mean? That I'm spending how much more money? For every, how much? $1 million I spend in what? Advertising. That's the name of the category. Okay, so you're recognizing each one of these values, I'm increasing my spending in advertising by $1 million. And for every $1 million I spend in advertising, how much is my revenue increasing by? All the way across, how much is it increasing by? $2 million. So you put that into a sentence. Okay, some of you actually got this correct on your quiz, but you didn't put it as your slope interpret. You put it as your y-intercept. So you still got it wrong. This is the slope interpretation. As the slope, or I'm sorry, as advertising increases by $1 million, the revenue increases by how much? $2 million. That's a pretty good deal. What if I told you I had an account where you could put your money and it would immediately double? It's pretty nice, right? Put $1 million in, get $2 million out. Okay. So I'd say that their advertising is pretty effective. That guy should keep his job. Or lady. Okay. All right. As advertising increases by $1 million, that's what my slope is telling me. Okay. Or you could say as advertising increases by $2 million, the revenue increases by $4 million. It could be said that way as well. All right, that's my slope interpretation. All right, so Aaliyah just answered, what was my y-intercept? 4, okay? And when my y value was 4, which you said was the y-intercept, that's what I'm asking for here, the y-intercept interpret. So when my y value was 4, what was my x value? What was my x value? 0. So write that in a sentence. When nothing, $0, is spent in advertising, what's going to be my revenue? $4 million. You can expect $4 million in revenue. Basically, that's my baseline. That's how much money I'm just going to make based on repeated customers, referrals, other types of way to bring in revenue. Now, what happens if I want to make more than $4 million in revenue? What do I need to do? Spend money in advertising. If I'm like, no, I'm good in $4 million, then why spend the money in advertising? They say, no, I need my revenue to be $10 million. You know that you need to spend money advertising and getting new customers, getting new clients. All right, so this is actually really helpful to know in the business world and to be able to read these types of graphs and this type of information. If your advertising values are going up and your revenue is going down, what does that tell you about your advertising? The more money you're spending on advertising, the less money you're making. What do you need to do? Or change what you're doing, right? Because what you're spending your money on for advertising is not bringing in more money for your company. Okay, so it really can be very helpful in the business world. All right, that's on your test. It might not be this question specifically, but you look at how the x values are increasing compared to y. That's how you interpret slope. And then for your y-intercept, you're basically calling it what it is. When x value is 0, so call it the category. In this case, advertising. When advertising is 0, the revenue will be $4 million. Okay, there's different ways you could word that, but it needs to be that. All right, that's everything you need to know for your test.